I don't know about you, but when I vote to elect my representatives, I'd like to feel represented. I'd like it if I got a response to a letter, a change in policy, or even just an acknowledgement of the priorities from my constituents and I. And maybe it's just me, but that feels missing in the sustainability sector right now, at least in the US. Now, I'm an American citizen living in Europe, and I have been struggling to get a ballot sent to me via mail, via email, anything. I've literally resorted to sending my mom to town hall before every election to make sure they're going to send me a ballot. And I don't know if social media is causing a parasocial expectation, if it's the thinly veiled class war that's creating this priority divide, or if we just don't matter once elected officials make it to office. And that's what we're talking about today on Environmental with Dandelion. If this is your first time tuning in, hi, hello, I'm Ob, your host and the chief cultivator at Dandelion Branding, where my team and I make sustainability part of mainstream conversations by sharing real sustainability stories happening in the world today and by helping sustainable brands tell their stories, because you know that the belief here is that businesses can turn the tide on this transition. And hello, you're the eco-curious baddie that has been called an alarmist hippie for your whole life, and now that the world is burning, I told you so isn't really the flat, right? Now, hold on to your reusable grocery bags because the proof is in the pudding, and today's story is a perfect example of the political nightmare we have found ourselves in around the world. But before I introduce my wonderful guests, I'm asking you to grab the like button like it's the only cucumber in the market not wrapped in plastic, okay? Because she likes it. She likes it. Today's show is a little different because I have two guests. They are Babette Hogan and Paul Corbit Brown. Babette is an incredible filmmaker, and together with Julie Eisenberg, they documented more than 15 years of how fossil fuel extraction has impacted West Virginia and how that extraction state, literally a quote from West Virginia's government, has impacted energy policy and environmental health across America. Their film is called Running for the Mountains, and it is shockingly frustrating, but also somehow so heartwarming and beautifully crafted. There are so many moments in this film that live rent-free in my mind, and one of them actually stars the other guest we have today. Oh my God, Paul, when you go around and you give the 24 peer-reviewed studies that show 4,000 people die from coal toxins every year in West Virginia to the state's representatives, you talk to the representative for David B. McKinley. And the shot there, Babette, with the quote on the wall, oh my God, our listeners haven't seen that, but you have to watch the show to see this. This guy, I know you were there, but they weren't. This guy tells you full chest, well, 100% of people rely on electricity. Like 100% of people don't need clean water in the world. Okay. And your response, perfect. You're like 100% of my electricity runs on the sun. It's time for a transition. And then he turns around and throws away those studies. My heart sunk. For real. That's so frustrating. I can only imagine how hard it is to throw your fists against the wall for so long. But obviously that was 10 years ago. But I would like to hear from both of you what, if anything, has changed, and what do you think people should know, and not just in West Virginia, but around the world?
Well, to start, thanks for having us today. What has changed? Some of the faces have changed, but not much of the policies. If anything, things have gotten progressively worse here. We've had even more outrageous laws coming into play. Recently, just in the last few days, they passed legislation to remove the coal severance tax for coal that's used to generate electricity. They've passed legislation that removes our ability to make public comments on legislation that's up for vote. They are trying to
Really?
rename the highest peak in West Virginia after that jackass Donald John Trump. I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And, we've been dealing with all this stuff from coal for generations, and then the fracking came
Hmm.
in, and as if all that wasn't enough for us, now we've got the data centers. I mean, we learned a long time ago to stop asking what's next, because my God, if you ask what's next, you're sure to find out. You will find out.
Yeah, something that really stood out to me in the show, in the film, was, I don't know who said it, but they likened West Virginia as a sacrificial space, and it doesn't sound like that's changing.
I think Chris Hedges was the first person that called West Virginia a sacrifice zone, and that's exactly what West Virginia has become. And it's not just expected of us, it's demanded of us. Politicians demand it of us, and it's considered like some kind of a badge of honor that we just give everything.
Back in the 70s, there was actually a paper presented. It was kind of just an idea of a depopulation plan of West Virginia, because people of that time who saw it as an extractive state just said, well, let's just move the people so that we can get at all the resources. Now, that didn't go anywhere, and it was considered highly conspiratorial, but there is a paper. And whether or not they're doing it intentionally or with subterfuge, it's occurring. The population of West Virginia has been declining because, one, there's actually, even though it's one of the richest states in terms of resources, none of that money stays in the state. That money is not brought down into the communities. Instead, the communities are starved. And once those communities are emptied because there's no work, the houses are actually just plowed down because they don't want people to live there. So we could talk conspiracy, but there's actually a footprint that we can follow that West Virginia, I think, is one of several areas that sustain a lot of damage from extractive industries. But I think it's not just the fossil fuels there; it's pharmaceuticals, it's anything that needs water, because West Virginia has been so rich in water. So, I mean, we also heard from, what was the executive from Nestle's back in the 80s, right, who was talking about privatizing water. Like, this is part of that plan, is just taking all that fresh, clean water for their industries and leaving us to have filtered water. And in the case of West Virginia, where people are poor, buying water is not possible, right?
Yeah.
It's not within the budget. So their whole ethos is based upon an ethos of plenty rather than conservation. The greed, which I think is actually a moral and spiritual problem, is on such high octane fuel right now. Use a fossil fuel.
High octane fossil fuel, indeed. Do you think, this is just a ponderance I had, but obviously the past year in the States, things have changed dramatically and quickly. Was it changing before? Because the EPA, before March of 2025, was actually putting quite a bit of money into renewable projects and defunding coal. Were you seeing change before that, and then this just has been a complete about face? Or was that kind of like a smoke and mirrors space in West Virginia in particular?
Well, the West Virginia state government has always rejected anything that has to do with renewable energy. I mean, so much so that several years ago, when the whole rest of the world was embracing, for instance, electric vehicles, West Virginia legislature basically outlawed. They made it so it was all but impossible to have a dealership in West Virginia that sold electric vehicles. I mean, while the whole world was trying to move towards more sustainable things, the West Virginia legislature was basically saying drill baby drill, burn baby burn. And so they have done everything they can to stunt our growth when it comes to renewables or sustainability things. And if I could back up
Mm-hmm.
just for a second, one of the things that's been said about West Virginia for a long time from folks who know is that we're a birthplace of rivers. And when you talk about things like filtering water, there are certain things you can't filter out of water. Once it's there, it's just there. I mean, one of the studies that
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned earlier, those 24 peer-reviewed studies, one of those studies said that the damage that's been done to the waters of West Virginia is not only pervasive, but it's irreversible. The damage that's been done to the waters here is there's no foreseeable human future when that damage will be undone. You can't filter it out. And so 3/4 of the water in southern West Virginia is not safe for recreation. It's not safe for recreation. You shouldn't swim in it. When you get a fishing license in southern West Virginia, many of the streams here are catch and release or a limit of one fish per certain time period
Wow.
that you can eat because that's the safe limit of consumption because of the toxins in the water. In fact, when I was doing this European divestment tour, we went to a museum in Germany that had samples of fish from right here near my house. Samples of fish that are genetically mutated because of the heavy metal toxins in these streams.
Wow. I don't understand. And so you mentioned Nestle earlier. I'm from Michigan originally, and we talked about that. Nestle is investing in buying the fresh water from the Great Lakes and bottling it. So I definitely understand like the frustration around that. And maybe it's because they can't do that in West Virginia. But I find it so hard to understand. And maybe it's because I have a conscience and I care about people and I care about the planet. And maybe it just comes down to that. But for me, why the water? Why is it okay to poison the water? And I know even in the film you talk about how the Clean Water Act is being sort of repealed. And I know that the EPA is pulling back regulations on both air and water. And you mentioned the data centers, and that's a big part of it. They're also trying to repeal the endangered species list. And I have to just always remind that we're talking about the Environmental Protection Agency here. Like, there was supposed to be a backstop for protecting these waters and air and land and species and the fish. And I don't even know if I have a question. I guess it's, are you as baffled and confused as I am, or do you think that there's a reason outside of the amoral corporate greed thing?
I think it's about profit. I think it's always about profit and short-term vision. People want things, one of the great American promises, what brought so many Europeans and so many people from the Asian continents and from now more recently from the South American continents, is this promise of plenty. Well, now we're starting to have to ration. Now there's not so much plenty, right? So we're going to start digging into what are the commons. And Thomas Lindsay talks about it. Thomas Lindsay is a lawyer who advocates for community resilience and control. And I urge everybody to look him up. He said that they used to be able to hide their greed, but they can't anymore. So they're coming into our communities. And Flint is a great example. When a Republican governor allowed that to happen, right?
Not allowed it, orchestrated it.
Orchestrated it. Thank you.
Orchestrated
it. And he chose Black and brown communities because what power do they have? Well, now they're also coming after white communities. And you're seeing that in Michigan, right? There's a amazing fight going on in Minnesota and Michigan and all those Great Lakes areas. And, there's other conspiracy theories that I've been introduced to that, given how much has been proven as being actual with these theories, you're wondering,
Yeah. Is it a conspiracy?
Is it just a theory?
Yeah.
It's probably, no, it might actually be a conspiracy. It's not just a theory, which I think is hard for all of us because it hurts to think that we are actually here at this level of greed
Yep.
At this
Yeah.
level of lack of community thinking, at this willingness to see other people suffer because, I need another yacht, I need another house, I need another island.
I need to hide things on my island.
Oh.
Yeah. One of the things that I always come back to, and I think this is just because when I was younger, conspiracy theorists were considered anti-American. But I am not an anti-American, and you obviously aren't either. This is because I'm a proud American. I love the country I came from, and now I live as the American in my tiny town in Europe. And the news isn't great, but I'm always the first to defend the United States because I am proud of the country I come from. It's beautiful there. The people are wonderful, just not all of them. I don't know if you feel the same way. Now that I'm the conspiracy theorist, I can tell you from this side, I'm not anti.
Thank you. I'd like to bring it back to one of the characters in our film, Jesse Johnson. He's the person who brought us to West Virginia. And Julie and I were both very dubious of what he was saying, what was going on in West Virginia, because it just seemed so impossible that many mountains were being blown up, that there was this level of destruction and harm to communities. He was running for both the candidacy of, or the nomination as the Green Party candidate for president in 2008 and for governor at the same time in West Virginia. We're like, this guy's just like, maybe not, we can't trust what he's saying. Give us an event in West Virginia that's worth coming out for. That's how dubious we were.
Okay.
And we finally went out there, and it was only like perhaps 4 days of experiences that I had that totally turned me around and got me to understanding the depth. And even then, not until I was arrested, and there's that scene in the movie where I'm arrested.
Yeah, you handled that like a professional, by the way. Great job.
Whatever being professionally arrested is, I don't know. But
it's that.
I was lucky enough in that case that somebody else had the wherewithal in the back seat to run their camera at great risk to them.
Yeah.
Right? So
he took your camera, right? I wanted to ask you, he took your camera. Did you get it back? Did he delete the footage?
That's a really good story that I'm not sure I'm supposed to. He didn't delete the footage because you saw it, because he didn't have the card. There's movement in the car that you might see that, if you really look at it closer, you'll go, oh, things are happening there. Paul has a lot of experience as a photojournalist himself of his cameras being crushed and destroyed. So the only thing that was on my mind is, how do I save my camera? Because without it, I couldn't continue doing the work that I was doing, that I was there for. How could I save my camera? And some people think of it as a sort of a disassociative moment for me. I don't think so. I was very much in the moment. I was very calm. What I can tell you, since you appreciate conspiracies, what the camera sees is an organizer, a very tall man dressed in a Union shirt, but he doesn't look characteristically like the other people there. And what became clear in the process was that this was a psychology operation going on. Yes, you had the Friends of Coal people who show up to push off any sort of advance of anti-coal, anti-mountaintop removal activists. Okay, so that's there. But there was actually organization that integrated the police to protect those people and that mine. So maybe Paul wants to speak up here for a moment about that too, his own experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty well-oiled machine, the way the state police, the local police work hand in glove with the companies. I mean, of course, the state police was formed from the very beginning to support the companies. The origins of the state police in West Virginia was to stop the labor movement, was to squash the labor movement back in the turn of the century. And so they have a long history there. And yeah, Babette's right. I have also been arrested. They've seized my cameras. I got them back months later in a box in pieces. They were just smashed to pieces. And they're like, oh, we don't know what happened to them. That's the way they were when we got them. And of course, the memory cards were gone. They've chased me off the highway, at 80 miles an hour. People have followed me home at night after speaking at hearings and fired a rifle in the front of my house. They've loosened the lug nuts on my tires in the middle of the night, so I get up and start driving down the road and the tires come off my car. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
I've had people surround me at public hearings and threaten me with murder right in front of public officials, and the public officials just look at me like, what do you get what you deserve, right? I mean, they don't care. They don't care. I mean, when you talk
Wow.
about, in your intro, you talk about wanting to be represented. This is, in West Virginia, you're not represented. If you have any concern whatsoever for the environment, for the water, for the air, for the land, for the well-being of the community, you're not represented by the government here.
In the film, you showed that even if you vote in a representative, they are undermined.
Yes, that story is told through Mike Mannypenny,
Right.
who was the one person who brought forth the most water bills of any legislator, and he was part of many who had gotten targeted. But here, okay, so I'm going to throw out a conspiracy there. One day he was out at a campaign event, and in that time, he's a farmer. His greenhouse went aflame. No proof as to what happened. Like it could have been just an accident.
It's never an accident. I'll just say it. It's never an accident. Because it's my show, so we get to say that.
Okay. I mean, I would go with, like, I was very highly scrupulous, and Mike was more even tempered, as he has learned to be, because you can't just say that without being very distrusted by all the people around you.
Sure.
But it sure looked conspicuous to me.
Yeah.
And I will also say there's another thing that in West Virginia, the police have always had the right to record you, right? Anybody can record anybody.
Yeah.
And we used to hear like clicking on the phone when we would talk to Jesse, and he was like, "Oh my God, well here they are, they're wiretapping me."
Yeah, they tap your phone. Wow.
And we're like, "Oh my God, are we in danger? Are we in danger of being wiretapped?" And like now, what we know, with Palantir and everything, is that no, we're all kind of these commodities that they get to tap into when they want to. I mean, Facebook, logarithms, whatever, all of it is.
Well, we had a train come through here a few years back, and it derailed and exploded. It was an oil train. So I went to photograph it. It was right along the river, and I went to photograph it. And I was in a line of cars, bumper to bumper line of cars. And it's a long story, but the short version is I got pulled over by the state police. And this guy, man, he's got the plate carriers, and he looked like he just came out of fucking Fallujah, like straight out of the war. And he is in my face. He's screaming at me, and I thought he's going to kill me. I mean, he is just going after me. What? I'm like, dude, whatever, man. I said, you don't want me to go up there? Fine, I'll turn around. He's like, oh no, you're going to jail, dude. I mean, he is screaming and cursing at me like he's going nuts. And he's like, no, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. He's screaming. I mean, so finally, anyhow, he lets me go. Long story short, he goes and presses charges and basically lies. He presses charges against me. They're trying to send me to prison for like 4-5 years. And
why?
In the end, what ends up happening is we find out, and this was several years ago before we knew about all this stuff. We find out that they knew who I was because they had license plate readers. And they had scanned my license plate, and it came out that they basically pulled me out of that line of traffic because they knew who I was, because he knew I was going to photograph this thing, because they had said on the news that when that train wrecked with all that oil, that it didn't get in the water supply, but in fact it did. And the crazy thing was, so when I finally got away from him, when he finally let me go, of course, I knew I wasn't going to get to the site of it. So what did I do? I went to the airport and rented an airplane and flew over it and took pictures of it anyhow. And the Huffington Post published those pictures. And when I finally had my day in court, the first thing the cop says to me, he's like, "Nice pictures in the Huffington Post." All sarcastic, right? So, like,
Yeah, and you're like, thanks, bro.
I was like, "Yeah, thanks." That's literally what I said. "Oh, thanks. Glad you enjoyed them."
Wait, they were like, okay, I'm gonna arrest you for taking pictures, which is your right to do. So you went and got an airplane?
I know a licensed pilot. And the funny thing
Okay.
about this was I called her. I called her and she answered the phone and she said, "Oh, hey, Paul, I kind of figured you'd be calling." She's like, "I already got the plane warmed up. What time will you be here?"
Well, that is awesome. What a good friend.
Because it was wintertime. And I mean, it was bitter, bitter cold in wintertime. And she's like, "Yeah," she said, "I kind of figured you'd be calling." She's like, "You want to fly over that wreck, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "It's warmed up. Just let me know when you'll be here."
Amazing. So usually at this point, I stop. We remind people to subscribe to this channel, and then I ask you about the role that you're playing in the sustainable transition. But I actually want to ask a different question today, because there's a guy in the movie, I think his name is Larry. He's talking about mountaintop removal. And he says, you people gotta help me stop this. It's not my responsibility by myself. That moment really grabbed me. That was the first moment where I was like, ugh. I want to know the change you want to see precipitate from running for the mountains. Do you think it's purely educational for the viewers that around the world, or do you want to see more action from it? And what do you want that action to be? Like, how can we help? What can we do?
Well, we definitely see it as an educational tool, and as a kickoff in conversation with communities. We know it sounds alarmist, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and we need to push through. It's like labor. We have to push through this to get the baby out. It's going to hurt. This period is going to hurt. These next 20 years likely are going to really hurt if we want to be able to regain the footing of having an environment that most of us can survive on. And I don't think that's exaggerating. I'm sorry if it feels that way, and I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable. But I think that's my truth. And one of the messages that we hope that the movie will take is that we have the power to conserve right now, all of us. We can use less electricity, we can use less water, we can convert. All of this is possible, and we have to stand up for it. So basically, we're throwing ourselves into the gears, and I think we are that generation that hits this point in history where I guess we get to be those people. I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be that. Like you, I had a theater background, thought I could have fun throughout my life playing roles, and journalism became my last role that I actually stuck to. But it was in seeking out stories, and here we are. This is the story. This is the story of mankind, and it's kind of consistent. The greed versus the generosity. I hate to put it in these terms. Father versus mother, but that's why they don't want women to vote. I'm just talking archetypally.
Yeah.
I think that's really where we're at.
Yeah, I'm down with the end of the patriarchy here, so it's fine.
I'm down with the end of the patriarchy too, just for what it's worth.
Sweet. Love having I love it when men say that. I think it's a little bit different, a little special. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. If you don't mind me adding to that answer, yes, it's about education, and it's about turning that into something more, because there's this old adage that knowledge is power, but I think that knowledge only becomes power when it's put to use. And so, yes, it's an educational piece, but it's a call to action. It's good to learn things, but it's more important to learn things and then use them. The United States is now descended fully into a police state. I don't want anybody to say we're closing in on a constitutional crisis. We're closing in on becoming an authoritarian. No, we're an authoritarian state now. We are a police state.
Yep.
There are masked,
Yep.
unidentified thugs. There are jackboot thugs roaming the streets, dragging women by the hair of their head, arresting people, murdering people in the streets. Call it what it is. We got to stop sugarcoating this. There are extrajudicial killings and arrests and beatings, and this is not acceptable. People say this isn't who we are. Yes, this is who we are. It's not who we say we are, but it is who we are, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to fight it with every fiber of our being. And this film, while it is about the environment, it's about so much more, because this is how we got to where we are, because we weren't paying attention, because we let things slip away one little piece at a time, one little sliver at a time. What happened at Blair Mountain was so fucking important, where we came together and we fought and we stood together side by side and we fought for what was so important and so sacred to us. And we forgot that lesson. And we let things slip a little bit at a time. And now we're right back there again. Only worse. Only worse. And so we have to relearn that lesson, because freedom and democracy and those things that we hold sacred as Americans aren't won once and for all. They're fought for every generation. And this generation's now going to have to fight and win those things again. And this fight's going to be even harder than the last one. Because really, if you look back over the history, and you just mentioned that word, the patriarchy, if you look back over the history of the United States, women didn't really fully realize all of their rights until just like 10 years ago. And where are those rights now? They fucking lost them all. They're gone. They're just gone. The Supreme Court just threw them out the window. And now all that stuff has to be fought for again. So yeah, the patriarchy sucks and it has to be dismantled. And DHS sucks and it has to be dismantled. Body cams is not going to fix DHS. Training isn't going to fix DHS. Palantir is here. Flock cameras are here. We're going to have to fight for all these things that we believe are sacred again. And this film is about so much more than just dirty water. It's about dirty politics. It's about dirty ideologies. And it's about a dirty thought process and about this corruption within the heart and soul of humanity that's so deep within the darkest parts of our hearts that has to be rooted out. It has to be rooted out. And it's about us having courage. And courage is a different thing than being fearless. Because fearlessness means you don't have fear, but we all have fear. Courage means that you have a willingness to face your fears. Courage comes from the Latin word cor, which is your heart. So to have courage means to have heart. And we're going to have courage. We're going to come from our hearts and we're going to fight, 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 and we're going to win all this back. And we're going to win our rights back and we're going to have our freedom back. And all this other stuff, we're going to put it back where it belongs in the dark ages. We're going to shine the light on it and we're going to put it back in the dark box it belongs in. Because we will not live like this. We will not live under the boot of these thugs.
I'm going to cry. Paul, you're my hero.
I'm going to take a moment and share a photograph that Paul took of Larry Gibson on Larry Gibson's land, which overlooks a mountaintop removal site. Paul, do you want to say anything about Larry?
He was such a dear friend. I think that was just a couple of days before he passed. And Larry was the one that taught me about that. When I first met Larry, I didn't I was terrified to speak in front of people. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk in front of people. And he was the one that told me that. He said, just talk from your heart and everything else will follow. That was the first thing he said to me. Just speak from your heart and it'll all take care of itself.
Wow. Wow. I could listen to you guys talk for a long time. You're my heroes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So how can people watch this movie? I highly recommend it. It starts out and you're just like, why am I watching this from the 80s? Like what is this relevant to me right now? And then it goes on and within 10 minutes you're like, no, what? And it's gripping and like, oh, it's incredible. So how can people find it? How can they support you? Where can they find you? How can they support the work you're doing now?
Well, you can go to our distributor, First Run Features, which is an established distributor in New York. That's one way, because you're in Europe right now, so I'm not sure how available things are. We are on Amazon, and in America, we are on a library system called Canopy. Another thing that Europeans could do is request that the movie be supplied through their libraries. That's one way. That's a way that's more independent of the other streaming facilities, but it's not going to end up on the top 10 tier.
Yeah, right. Well, we could try.
Right.
We could try.
Okay.
Yeah. Watch the film. You can find links to all of these in the resources document in the description. Is there anything that you would like to say or ask?
Aubrey, thank you so much for giving us the space and time to talk about things that actually we haven't been able to talk about yet with other people. You know, your willingness to enter into that world of speculation and truth has been clearly exciting and motivating to us in this conversation. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just like to echo that thank you, and just a reminder, I'm certainly not the first person to say this, but just a reminder to everyone out there, democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to get in the game. Voting is just your ticket into the game. It is not the game. You've got to do more than just vote. And if you want a thriving democracy, you have to be involved. So please, please, please get out there and get your feet in the street. Now's the time.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've done, everything you're doing. And thank you, everyone, for sticking around with me and Babette and Paul. I will link the video to the trailer of the video so you can watch that next right here. Yes, I am telling you to leave the Environmental with Dandelion page to go watch this trailer. But don't worry, because I put my face in a circle right here so you can subscribe to our channel really easily. And I will see you next time. Bye.